So, in my April Fool's Day video, wait, did you not see that video? Okay, well, it's actually not all that important for this video, but it's still worth a watch. But in that video, I made a parody of some of my favorite small to medium-sized educational YouTube channels. However, two of those creators are more or less somewhat known for speaking with a particular accent, which kinda makes impersonating someone a bit more challenging. Seriously, I spent weeks watching Up and Adam videos to try to get her accent right. So, what exactly are accents? Why do some people talk differently, even despite having grown up speaking the same language? When talking about accents, there is certainly a lot to unpack. For one, accents can hold a huge range of preconceived stereotypes, like how British accents often sound civilized or classy, Southern accents sound nice, but less than educated, New York accents sound rude, Minnesotan accents sound Canadian, and how Australians all basically sound like Steve Irwin to some people. For this reason, you could imagine that many linguists might be reluctant to talk about accents when talking about how people in New York and New South Wales talk differently from those in regular York and current South Wales. Though that is actually because these groups have different accents because they speak different dialects of the English language itself. One thing that I learned while researching this video which really surprised me is the fact that there are actually 3 different types of accents. The first are regional accents. These are everything from British accents to New York accents to Australian accents. Regional accents are the easiest to confuse with dialects, but they are still different. As a basic rule of thumb, a dialect is an entire segment of a language where pronunciation, vocabulary, phonology, and even grammar can be different, whereas an accent just refers to pronunciation. Basically, a dialect will care about how you spell the word tire, whereas accents only really care about how strongly you pronounce the last R sound in the word. Dialects are basically the next level down on the tree from full-on languages, but still a step up from accents. Put a Brit, an American, and an Australian in a room together, and even though they won't be talking the same way, all joking aside, they'll understand each other perfectly fine. Unless it comes down to a few select local slang terms, but that can happen anywhere. The second type are foreign accents. These are definitely not to be confused with dialects, as they are basically what you retain when you learn a second language. If you've ever talked with someone whose native language wasn't the language you were speaking at the time, they most likely had some kind of accent. Since we all grew up speaking radically different languages with crazy different phonologies, this often leads to people essentially speaking a foreign language like they would their native language. Por ejemplo, cuando tú me oyes hablando en español, tú probablemente no piensas que era mi primera lengua. I never even figured out how to roll my R's properly. So if you hear a Turkish person struggling to say the what and th sounds, just remember that you probably can't really say the U and O sounds very easily either. The third type are class accents, which kind of caught me off guard when I found out about them, but it does make sense. Matter of fact, it plays pretty much perfectly into why many of us consider some accents to sound smarter or more prestigious than others. Now, this isn't merely the stereotype of accents sounding more posh than others, so much as certain accents kind of actually being more posh than others. Some accents are often associated with the working class, as they came up from working class people. Think Bernie Sanders' strong New York accent, as he was born into a working class family in 1941.
We should not have a grotesque level of wealth inequality in which 3 billionaires now own more wealth than the bottom half of the country.
Someone born around that time and place but to a much wealthier family probably wouldn't be speaking with that strong of an accent. However, because accents, especially regional accents here in North America, often have somewhat of a more negative connotation attached to them, it is said that many in the younger generations are starting to lose their accents. This isn't quite so true across the board, but it is more so in some regions. That being said, things like New Yorkers being portrayed in movies across the board as thugs and criminals hasn't exactly done wonders for the preservation of their accent. There is also the prevalence of the general American accent, especially in media, as a kind of neutral dialect for the entire continent. The most famously over-exaggerated instance of this is the infamous newscaster's voice, which doesn't sound like it comes from anywhere in America because it is not supposed to. If you want to learn more about why TV news anchors talk this way, check out Austin McConnell's video on this topic. The general American accent is especially popular in American and Canadian media, as it is intended to be clear and easy for everyone to understand, something I should really be working more on in my videos. General American isn't really an American accent so much as a lack of any regional accents that's just supposed to be generally American. It's supposed to sound like you don't have an accent at all, even though technically speaking without an accent is kind of like writing without a font. It's an accent that's not supposed to have a southern twang or a New York swat vowel. just something for the whole continent to easily understand and relate to. My accent, as is the case with most Americans, is more or less like General American, but there are still a few regionalisms in my speech because I'm actually from somewhere. Well, granted, I did grow up somewhere else, so I guess I'm not truly from anywhere specific in the States, but okay, next topic. Nevertheless, accents are inherently regional, which of course has made them famously convenient for actors, even if they clearly don't speak with the accent their character does. When done right, it can add authenticity to the character, if it's even noticeable at all. When done not so right though, well, best case scenario, your performance becomes a laughingstock on Twitter for the next 2 weeks. When an actor is imitating one specific person though, like Meryl Streep with Margaret Thatcher, or even myself with Jade from Up and Adam and Emma from DSM Wannabe Linguist, they are imitating what is known as an idiolect. An idiolect goes more specific than an accent or a dialect, as it refers to a person's specific pronunciations and mannerisms, something I probably completely failed in. This is actually something I kept in mind for all 6 of the creators I impersonated, even the Americans. Since people are their own specific things and often don't like being placed in specific boxes, all the while placing everyone else in specific boxes, everyone of course has a different way of talking. An idiolect can therefore refer to not just how the person in question says a word, but what they say even more specifically than what their dialect tells them to say. For example, saying yard sale or garage sale or rummage sale are all dialectal things, whereas my late grandpa Jack calling them garbage sales was an idiolectal thing. Basically, it's like your own personal accent. People also change their accents all the time, whether it be to try to fit in better with a group or to try to avoid preconceived stereotypes, or depending on the specific situation, as these changes don't even have to be permanent. Some people do change their accents permanently, some people just switch between 2 different accents depending on whatever situation they find themselves in, some people just prefer to stick to their own accent, and some people just shouldn't try accents. Thank you as always for watching this video, and I hope it helped teach you a bit about what accents really are and how they work. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon if you are able to help us all learn something new every Sunday.